They laughed when he walked into the SEAL recruitment office. Dusty boots, flannel shirt, 62 years old. One kid joked about bingo night. Another asked if he brought his walker. But no one laughed after the rifle range. No one spoke after the ocean trial. And when he picked up that weapon, calm, steady, terrifyingly precise, they realized something chilling. This man wasn't here to apply. He was here to return. And the ghosts he carried were real. This isn't just a story about age. It's about legacy, silence, and a skill so sharp it slices through generations. Subscribe now if you believe some legends walk quietly until they're called to rise again. He walked into the naval recruiting office like a man who'd taken a wrong turn from a lumber yard. Dust on his jeans, boots that had seen decades of gravel roads, and a sun-bleached flannel shirt tucked just enough to show he still believed in discipline. In his left hand, folded 4 times with the precision of someone who still respected corners, was a single sheet of paper. The application. The recruiter behind the desk looked up slowly, already forming the words he'd say to redirect this old-timer to the VA down the street. But when he read the date of birth, he blinked. 62. That couldn't be right. The man didn't look fragile. On the contrary, he looked solid, like something built before shortcuts existed. But 62? His eyes drifted further down the form. Under prior service, there weren't units or ranks. Just 3 words written in all caps, blocky and firm, not officially listed. It was the kind of phrase that made a clerk chuckle nervously, then glance toward the wall where the procedural manual hung untouched. "You know, this is SEAL prep, right?" the recruiter asked, forcing a polite smile. "These guys are half your age and then some." The man didn't nod, didn't smirk. He simply looked the recruiter in the eye with the calm stillness of someone who'd already lived through things no simulator could recreate and said, "Where do I start?" No bluster, no bravado, just a question, low and steady, like the creak of a steel door swinging open again after years of silence. A second recruiter behind the glass snorted. "What's he gonna do? Teach them how to use a musket?" One of the younger enlistees laughed loud enough to turn heads. But the old man didn't respond. He didn't glare. He didn't even shift his weight. Just waited, still as stone, until the first recruiter finally cleared his throat, stood up, and pointed toward a clipboard. "You'll need to fill out the waiver. Physicals tomorrow morning. Be here at 600. The man took the clipboard, nodded once, and walked out the same way he came in, boots silent, back straight, like someone who wasn't applying for anything. He was coming back. Orientation smelled like floor polish, burnt coffee, and too much testosterone. A long room, half filled with folding chairs and the sound of 20-something men trying to out-confidence each other. Tank tops, crew cuts, bragging about bench press numbers and how fast they ran their last mile. The kind of energy that bounced off the walls and came back louder. Then the old man walked in. Conversations didn't stop right away, just stumbled slightly, like a skipped heartbeat. He moved slow, not from pain but from purpose, like each step had weight, like he wasn't entering the room, but measuring it. Worn jeans, faded flannel, cap pulled low, no earbuds, no swagger, just a canvas satchel slung over one shoulder and a thin, leather-bound notebook tucked beneath one arm. Someone in the back snorted. "Did someone lose their grandpa?" Another chimed in. "Hey, sir, bingo night's down the hall." Laughter rolled across the room like a wave trying to hide its nervousness. He didn't flinch, didn't even glance their way, just walked to the second row, first seat on the aisle, and sat down without asking if it was taken. He opened the notebook slowly, carefully, like it held instructions he didn't want to get wrong. Then he took out a pencil, not a pen, not a stylus, and began to write. Not scribble, not doodle, write. Each stroke was clean, deliberate. Letters formed like they were being carved instead of sketched. He paused between sentences, not because he was slow, but because he was thinking, processing. He wasn't taking notes, he was recording data. No one noticed how his eyes moved, how he tracked doorways, windows, shadows, how he clocked every person who walked in and out without turning his head. No one saw how he gripped the pencil like a trigger, thumb loose, index firm, or how his breathing never changed, even when the instructors barked introductions like drill sergeants trying to claim authority, because he didn't need to prove anything. He wasn't here to be impressed. He was watching, listening, calculating. And the room, loud as it was, had no idea it was being weighed. The sun wasn't up yet when they lined up for the physical. Dew still clung to the pavement. Breaths came out in fogged clouds. Most of the recruits bounced on their toes, shaking out nerves, jawing about who'd beat whose time. The old man just stood there, hands behind his back, eyes forward, still as the flag above them. One of the younger guys elbowed his buddy and whispered, "Hope someone brought oxygen." Another laughed, or a stretcher. The instructor gave the signal, stopwatch in hand, and the 1.5-mile run began. Most recruits started fast, trying to win the first impression, but about halfway through, feet began to slap harder. Breaths turned to gasps, and arms started to lose rhythm. That's when they noticed him. Not fast, not sprinting, just moving, like a metronome, like his body had memorized the exact number of steps and refused to waste one. His shirt stayed dry longer than it should have. His breathing never changed, and when he crossed the finish line, he didn't bend over, didn't rest, just looked up at the sky like he was checking the weather. They moved to push-ups. Some recruits knocked out 30 quick, then stalled, arms trembling, faces red. The old man? He lowered and raised like a machine. No drama, no shakes. The count hit 50, 60, 70. He didn't slow, just moved. The sit-ups followed. More groans, more strain, but not from him. He moved with the same quiet pace, like he'd done this 1,000 mornings before anyone asked him to prove anything. Then came the pool, cold, chlorinated, the place where bravado drowned. Recruits flailed, panicked, tried to muscle their way through the water. A few had to be pulled aside, coughing. But not him. He didn't dive. He slid in. No splash, no wasted motion. Underwater, he moved like memory. Smooth, unhurried, like he was swimming home. One instructor checked the stopwatch, frowned, then checked it again. "You sure that's right?" he asked, holding it up to the other. The second instructor didn't answer, just watched the old man exit the pool without blinking water from his eyes. And in that silence, they all started to understand. He wasn't there to pass the test. He was the standard. It started the way most things do in places like that, not with an announcement, but with a whisper. Quiet, casual, almost like a joke. The old guy? He's not normal. At first, it was easy to dismiss. A fluke run time, maybe, a lucky push-up count. But the murmurs didn't fade. They multiplied. A SEAL candidate, former Division I swimmer with a build like a rescue boat, confessed he couldn't keep up in the pool. "He doesn't even kick hard," he said, half in awe. "Just moves." Someone else said they saw him doing pull-ups behind the mess hall. Clean form, no momentum, 40 reps without a single shake. No music, no grunt, just rhythm. Another recruit claimed he heard him speaking fluent Tagalog to a supply officer during a gear issue. A different guy swore he caught him disassembling a standard-issue sidearm behind the barracks, blindfolded, on a milk crate, with perfect precision. No one could confirm it. No one had a photo. But somehow everyone believed it, because he didn't talk, unless you asked, and when you did, really did. He answered in a way that made you want to shut up and listen. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Low. Even. Words measured out like ammo, one at a time, no waste. One night, after chow, a younger recruit made the mistake of cracking a joke within earshot. Something about retirement homes and weapon qualifications. The old man didn't react, just kept sipping from his battered thermos. But another guy, one of the sharper ones, caught the way his eyes narrowed. Just a fraction, not anger, assessment. After that, things shifted. He didn't earn their attention with speeches or stories. He earned it by doing the things others struggled with, quietly, accurately, repeatedly. One of the instructors, a real-deal operator, passed him on the way to the gear depot and said, "You ever teach?" The old man paused, only when someone's ready to listen. And somehow everyone heard about that line by nightfall. No one had seen him raise his voice. No one had seen him lose his breath. But now they all started watching more carefully, because the loudest man in the room was starting to feel irrelevant. And the quietest one, he was starting to look like the one they'd all end up learning from. The range was already unforgiving by the time they lined up. Wind chopping sideways, dust flicking off the berms, light fading just enough to blur the edges of the targets. Most of the recruits were still sore from the morning drills. Hands stiff, shoulders tight. One instructor barked the instructions like he was reading from a script no one could hear over the gusts. It was supposed to be simple. Fire, group, qualify. And then it wasn't. The first few recruits stepped up, tried to shake off nerves, and started sending rounds. You could hear it in the rhythm. Panic disguised as aggression. Rapid bursts, uneven cadence. Brass bouncing in nervous patterns across the concrete. A few landed solid hits. Most didn't. One kid cursed under his breath after every pull. Another walked back, shaking his head. "Wind's brutal," he muttered. The old man didn't say a word. He waited. Still, watching. When it was his turn, he stepped forward without fanfare. No warm-ups, no adjusting gloves, just rolled up his sleeves, set down a scuffed canvas pouch, and unzipped it like it was nothing more than lunch. The instructors glanced at each other. One leaned in, ready to call it off the second the rifle looked too heavy for him. But then he moved. Not fast, not showy, just right. He planted his feet, not the perfect angle they teach in manuals, but solid, balanced, like he knew exactly how much wind would touch his shoulder before the first trigger squeeze. He brought the rifle to his cheek. No exaggerated breathing. No cinematic pause. Just bang. A single shot. Someone downrange called out, "Dead center." He fired again. Same hole. A third, slight shift, barely. But the hole didn't widen. It deepened. By the fifth shot, the instructor stopped watching the paper. They were watching him. The way he breathed between rounds. The way his finger reset before the trigger even cooled. Every move precise. No adjustment needed, like his body remembered something muscle memory had never forgotten. By the 10th round, the paper was more tier than target. And for the first time all week, the range went silent. Because everyone had just realized they weren't watching someone learn how to shoot. They were watching someone who never stopped. The instructors had a routine. Watch, score, move on. No favorites, no exceptions. But the old man disrupted that rhythm. Not by asking questions, not by standing out. By not standing out. By doing everything right without ever looking like he was trying to. Chief Harmon noticed first. A SEAL with 2 decades of deployments and just enough scars to know what real experience looked like. He wasn't easily impressed, But after the range test, he leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, and just watched the old man pack up. Movements tight, calm, like his hands were working from memory that hadn't dulled in 40 years. Harmon waited until chow. Then he made the call. "Send me his file," he said to the admin down the hall. "Name's Martin, first name unknown, age 62, civilian applicant." It took longer than expected. The printer didn't spit out the usual thick stack of forms. No PT scores, no school transcripts, no DD 214, just one page. A note. Handwritten, signed. The paper felt heavy even before he read it. "Clear him. No questions. Just observe. Rear Admiral C.W. Garrison, returner." Harmon stared at the signature, then the name printed on the envelope. Thomas W. Martin. He'd seen it before. Not in graduation lists, not in locker room plaques, in reports, classified ones, old, yellowing documents with redacted lines and operation codes that didn't belong to any branch publicly acknowledged. Missions labeled as unconfirmed. Operators labeled non-official. Southeast Asia, 1970s. Colombia, 1983. Congo. 91. Martin's name didn't appear in the narrative, only in footnotes. Asset inserted. Exfil secured. Status silent. Harmon stepped outside, note still in hand, and lit a cigarette with a flick that didn't hide the tremor in his fingers. He took a drag, long and slow, watching the wind bend the smoke east. The man inside wasn't a recruit. He wasn't even a candidate. He was a ghost from another era. And Harmon knew better than to question ghosts. The ocean trial wasn't designed to be survived. It was designed to break you down until the only thing left was what you couldn't fake. No warm-up, no countdown. Just the whistle, the cold, and the roar of the surf swallowing every excuse you'd ever made. They lined up on the shoreline, wrists bound, ankles sore, hearts already hammering from what came before. The instructors didn't yell this time. They didn't need to. The ocean did the screaming for them. The young ones tried to steel themselves, flexing muscles, jawing about pain thresholds. But once the tide wrapped around their legs and the salt water clawed its way into their lungs, all that bravado scattered like sand. The cold didn't just sting. It invaded, deep, into joints, into thought, into memory. One recruit puked before they even hit the third round of duck dives. Another just stopped moving mid-float, eyes wide, lips blue. They dragged him out while he mumbled something about his heartbeat sounding like it was coming from underwater. But the old man? He moved like he'd been there before. He let the water take him, rolled with it instead of fighting, like someone who knew you couldn't outmuscle the ocean. You could only outlast it. No flailing, no coughing, no panic. Even blindfolded, he moved with eerie control, counting steps between drops, timing his breath against the swells like he was sinking to a rhythm only he could hear. Instructors watched from the beach, clipboards forgotten at their sides. One of them leaned over and whispered to the chief, "You seeing this?" The chief didn't answer, just narrowed his eyes. After nearly 2 hours, they were called back in. Most stumbled out like survivors, shivering, broken, crawling toward towels and dry sand like castaways. The old man stood, shoulders square, back straight. He walked out of the surf like the tide had nothing left to take from him. Didn't wipe his face, didn't look around. Just kept walking up the beach with eyes that weren't cold, but far away. One of the instructors muttered, barely audible, "That's not training, that's remembering." The final phase wasn't built for comfort. It was built to break rhythm, Urban simulation range, close quarters, tight angles, unpredictable targets. Timers screamed, strobes flashed, and paint rounds flew like insults in a street fight. Obstacle navigation wasn't optional. It was punishment wrapped in adrenaline. Miss a shot, trip a wire, freeze for half a second too long, and you paid for it. Most recruits geared up like they were starring in a movie. Chin straps too tight, gloves too new, goggles fogged before they even cleared the first breach point. Instructors barked last-minute advice, most of it drowned out by the blare of the starting horn. Then came the old man. Same boots, same quiet. They handed him the standard rifle, well-worn, scratched, not forgiving, and he took it like he already knew its language. No adjusting, no tinkering. Just a glance down the sights like greeting an old friend. And when the timer started, the range changed. He didn't rush, he didn't charge forward like the others. He moved like a shadow with a purpose. No wasted motion, no exaggerated turns. Just efficiency in the rawest form. First corner, 2 targets, center mass, both. No hesitation. Up the stairs, duck under wire, pivot left. 3 more, 1 behind cover. The kind that throws people off, not him. 1 shot, 1 shift, 1 drop. The sound of his rifle wasn't noise, it was punctuation. Every round landed with intent, like he wasn't aiming, he was remembering. One instructor whispered, "That's not shooting, that's storytelling." He didn't talk during the run, didn't celebrate after. But the clock did. When he hit the final mark, the buzzer cut clean. The instructors looked down. One of them blinked twice. 9 seconds faster than the course record. No one clapped, no one joked, because now they understood. He hadn't picked up that rifle to impress anyone. He picked it up the way a man might pick up a gravestone. Carefully, quietly, like it meant something no one else in the room could begin to comprehend. And for the first time, the room didn't need to ask who he was. They just stood still and listened to the silence he left behind. The hallway outside the sim range was quiet. No boots stomping, no gear clattering, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint creak of steel lockers lined up like soldiers at parade rest. Most recruits filtered out in pairs, buzzing over course times, nursing bruises, swapping exhausted grins. But the old man walked alone. Locker 47 was already open. Not swinging or ajar, open. Like someone had known he was coming. Inside, folded with care, sat a clean towel, a fresh set of BDUs, and a small black box resting dead center on the middle shelf. He stared at it for a long moment, then reached in. Not cautious, not curious. Like he'd done it before, like he knew. The coin was cold, heavier than it looked. It wasn't polished, it wasn't flashy. It didn't have an eagle or a flag or a ribbon of patriotic slogans curling around the edge. It had an insignia, simple, brutal, unmistakable. A spear overshadowed terrain, no name, no rank, and on the back, 1 word. Still. No explanation, no ceremony. Behind him, the quiet broke. Soft steps, deliberate. The old man didn't turn around. He already knew the rhythm. Chief Harmon stood 3 feet behind him. No clipboard, no smirk, no rank on display. Just a man who'd been carrying a question for days and finally got his answer. He cleared his throat, then paused. Then, softer than anyone had ever heard him speak, he said, "Welcome back." The old man didn't smile, didn't salute. He just turned slightly, enough to make eye contact. 1 nod, no words, because there was nothing left to explain. Chief Harmon stood there as the old man closed the locker, pocketed the coin, and walked down the hallway like he'd just finished something. Something no one else in that building could begin to understand. It wasn't a gift, it was a confirmation, a reminder. He wasn't returning to a team. He had never left it. Still, there was no music, no flag-draped stage, no grinning photos or handshakes beneath a banner. When he left, there was no announcement. Just an empty bunk, a folded towel, and a locker door left ajar. His name was never read aloud. His coin was never displayed. But the ones who'd trained beside him noticed something different the moment he was gone. They started calling him Coach, not with a smirk, not like a nickname passed around to mock. It was reverent, quiet, the kind of words spoken by men who had seen something they didn't have words for. Because everything he did, everything, taught them more than any classroom or instructor ever had. How he moved, how he listened, how he didn't waste words when silence could do more. He didn't offer corrections. He offered presence. A few weeks after he disappeared, one of the instructors unlocked his locker to clear it out, but didn't. The gear was gone, the coin too, but something about the emptiness felt permanent, sacred. So they closed the door, left it untouched, and told admin it was still in use. No one questioned it. Down at the sim range, the one he tore through like it remembered him, they found a message scratched into the concrete wall behind the final barrier. Small, clean, precise. Just 7 words. He wasn't applying. He was returning. No one ever admitted to carving it, but no one erased it either. And from that day forward, something changed in the compound. Recruits spoke a little softer before dawn, spent an extra second studying the course layout, waited to crack jokes until they were sure no one else was listening. It wasn't fear, it wasn't awe, it was respect, the kind that lingers, the kind that doesn't need a story to justify it. Just a memory. Some say they saw him months later, sitting alone at a shooting range in New Mexico, or walking the edge of a beach on Coronado, just past sunrise. But no one ever proved it. He left the way he came in. Quiet, measured, unforgettable. And in his absence, the silence spoke louder than any speech ever could.